Hello everyone, this is Cameron Snow with Danomics.com. In today's video, I'm going to review how to use a few of the new tools in Danomics. These tools are focused for geoscience, so we're not going to be diving into a lot of petrophysics here. So here's the scenario. Let's say you've gone through and you've picked out your stratigraphic framework and now you're ready to map it up. So here you can see in my project I've picked out several tops across a bunch of wells. I've made my cross sections and now I'm ready to map that up, and I want to make some structure maps to show my manager. So once I've got that ready and I've saved these tops that I've picked out in my CPI file here, now what I'm ready to do is I am ready to create some structure maps. So the fastest way to do this is to work through a flow. And so here I have an example flow set up for doing this, and we're going to walk through this step by step. So first of all, how do you make a new flow? What you want to do is you want to go to the folder that your project is in, right click and select new flow. This will bring up a dialog. You can give it the name you want, and then you can hit OK. I've already made the flow, so I'm not going to create a new one here. Once we have made this flow, you're going to need to add some flow blocks to it. To do this, remember you just hit new, and then you can select the flow blocks that you want. And if you're having trouble finding those blocks, you can always start typing, and it will auto-filter to the most relevant blocks. Or you can come down here to the flow tools, and you can select the various blocks from here. Okay, so for creating structure maps, there are a few specific tools that we need. So to start off, we're going to start with a points input. And the reason we're starting with a points input is, remember, the points input block allows us to take tops, it allows us to take points, it allows us to take production files. So any of that tabular data, that really goes into points input. Then we have a new tool that we have developed. This is called the TopsToTVD tool. This tool will it'll take the tops that are coming in from the points input block, and then it'll also take your well headers and your deviation files, and it will convert your tops to an XYZ. Then optionally, we're going to output those points. So here I'm writing a file called tvdtops.points. From there, we can, once again, optionally apply some filtering to here. So here I'm going to use our spatial filter. And the purpose of this is to remove any outliers from our data. This is entirely optional. Then we use points to grid, which will take those filtered points and it will grid them up. We're then going to write that grid to a file. So I'm going to call that structuremaps.grid. I'm then going to apply some optional smoothing, and I am going to create my structure map. So that's an overview of the block, but now let me go through this detail by detail. So the first thing is, let's jump back to our CPI file, and what I see here is that the stratigraphic framework I've picked out has been saved to the file prbdemodata.tops. So that is the tops data set that I want to work with. So when I come here to my points input, that is what I'm going to choose, is that prbdemodata.tops. And remember, as you type, it will filter down to that. So here's that file, so prbdemodata.tops. So I've chosen that. In the TopsToTVD, I need to choose my well headers. Once again, you probably want to use the same well headers as you had in your CPI file. So you can go back, check that out, and once again, this is called prbdemodata.well database. So if I go back to my structure maps flow, once again, you can start typing, and it's prbdemodata.wdb. And there's an option here for applied deviations. If all your wells are vertical or you don't have any deviation surveys, you don't have to worry about that. But since I do have some deviated wells and deviated wells that I've picked tops on here, I'm going to choose apply deviations. And if you do this, what you'll need to do is to choose your deviation surveys. I've already processed my deviation surveys to get them in the correct Danomics format. and that's called and that's in a file called process deviations here that I've created. And you need to select what to do if the deviations are missing for a well. You could either treat that well as vertical or you could skip it. In general, I would recommend to treat this as vertical. Now, the question is, what do you do if you have deviated wells and you've not yet processed those deviations? Well, you'll need to create a new flow and handle that. So once again, deviations are a points database. So you'll select your deviations in the drop-down menu. You'll use Danomics Deviations to XYZ tool, where you'll select the measure depth, inclination, and azimuth columns. And then finally, you'll you'll output that. And here I'm outputting it to process deviations, which are what I put here in this drop-down menu. Okay, after we have filled out the TopsToTVD block, we have the option to write a points output here, and this would just be the XYZ coordinates of our tops. I'm going to choose to do that, so I am writing out my tvd tops.points file here because I just want to have that information available in case I need it for something else. The point spatial filter, this is optional here, and it has a couple of different modes. But the one that most people use is the remove outliers mode, and you can choose what to focus on here. So we're going to group by formation, and then what is the value that you want to remove outliers from, and we're going to choose the Z here because we're focused on removing outliers that are incorrect in the Z direction. We give it a number of neighbors, a low and a high percentile, and our outlier ratio. We then choose our coordinates mode, whether or not we'll be in lat long or XY, and in this case, we are in XY. Okay, once we do that, we're then ready to use our points to grid block. And here, we are going to select our X, Y, and Z columns. And then there are a few other settings like which method would we like to use, so kriging or sparse kriging or inverse distance. I recommend keeping this on auto unless you have a specific need. You also see a box here called apply deviations. Now, we have already applied deviations. We did this in the TopsToTVD step, so we do not need to do that here. So I just wanted to make you aware of that. And then finally, we have a grid output, and this will be the name of the file that gets written. So we have structuremaps.grid. Here I'm applying an optional smoothing to that grid. And then finally, I want to write out that smoothed grid. And so to run this flow, remember we just hit the play button here. This will pop up the jobs menu, and in a few seconds, the flow should run. Okay, so now we see that it's ran 100% and it's finished. If you happen to get an error, remember you can click on the information icon here, and you can see the information about your flow. This will tell you give you information on how many values may have been filtered out as well using that point spatial filter block. Okay, so now that we have generated those structure maps, what we'd like to do is display them. So a couple of ways we can do that. First, we can come here and we can open the structuremaps.grid database, and we can actually just take a quick peek at these. Now, this isn't the most informative view. It's really just there to help you understand the general parts of your thing. The better way to view it is in a map file. The way to bring this up in a map file is what you would do, and I've already got it on here, but I'm going to close this and bring it back up here, is you would start by hitting the plus button. A grid file is a property, so we're going to hit property, and then once again you start typing, and we see this structure maps 1.grid. That was my smoothed grid, so I'm going to select that, and then I'm going to select the formation, in this case the Niobrara formation, and I'll hit add. And there we go. Now we have the Niobrara formation displayed here. And as always, you can always edit this, select a different color palette. We could reverse that if we wanted to. And we could also put on custom contours if we would like. So there we go. That is our structure map. Also here you have the option of showing the map in 3D space. Now this is a brand new feature, so there's not a lot of options here yet. We are going to be adding things like color palettes and contours and everything you'd come to expect in that regard to the 3D view. But in the interim here, you can just display that plane. Once again, the way you would do that is you hit plus. You'd select that you want to display a grid, start typing, and here it'll ask you to you can either select all grids or selected. I'm only interested in the Niobrara here, so I'm just going to say formation equals Niobrara, and I'm going to hit add. And we can see that this appears, and what I can see is that I have some horizontal wells down here that looks like they did indeed land in the Niobrara formation. And I also have some horizontal wells up here that obviously landed in shallower formations. And so that is it for the demo on how you generate structure maps and how you display those in both a map view and in a 3D view. So once again, just to leave you with the flow here, remember your tops come in as points. We then use the TopsToTVD tool and select our well headers and our deviation files. We optionally write that out as points. We can apply a spatial filter if there's some outliers that we need to remove. We then generate the grid, selecting the property that we would like to grid up. We then use our grid output to write this multi-grid, which contains the structural grids in this case, for all of our formations. We can then do things like optional smoothing steps and then write out those smooth grids. All right, I hope this video was useful to you. If you have any questions, as always, you can email us at support@danomics.com. And if you're not yet a Danomics subscriber, you can sign yourself up for a free demo at danomics.com and just click on the Create Account button on the right-hand side of the page. Thanks, and goodbye.